Hi, in this video we are going to look at 13 ways of returning a Hello World page in Boomla. I have a little cheat sheet prepared, so we are going to go through this and let's get started. We start by creating a new project. Let's start from scratch and use a subdomain 13 ways of Hello World. Let's open the website and start by opening the IDE, which we have to install first. All right, first one, we are going to create a index.html file with a static1 file type. So let's come here, new file, index.html, and we are going to set the type to static1 and add the content hello world. Open it and it shows it is bold, so it was interpreted as HTML. So what is happening here? When you go to the index.html file, Boomla will look at the file type of this file, which is static1, and then it will execute the static1 application. Now, what the static1 application does is it looks at the file name, specifically the file extension, which is the last segment of the file name, in our case HTML, and if it recognizes it, it will set the content type accordingly and serve the body of this file as the response. So that's why we get a well-formatted HTML document. And by the way, you can see that the toolbar was injected into this page so that this helps editing your website. The toolbar is injected generally when you're returning HTML response. Let's see the next one, HTML1. So we come here, create a file named HTML1. The name could be anything in this case, it doesn't matter. I like to keep the sys file at the top, but it doesn't really matter. And yeah, keep the order. So here, we are going to set the type of this file to HTML1. And now we can do the same, enter hello world, save it, and open it. We get the same results. The HTML1 engine is different from the static1 engine or file type in that the static1 type returns the file as is, while the HTML1 engine does perform some processing. I'm not going to go into detail here. The HTML1 is a fairly old type, so I generally use the SJS4 engine these days. So let's look at that. There are three major variants of the SJS4 engine. Let's start by SJS4. Create a new file. The name could be anything. I put it at the bottom, all right, and set the file type to SJS4. Now, this is a JavaScript engine, which means that you have to write JavaScript. So to return the same response, you'd go and set the response on the response file, because every application in Boomla has to decorate this response file right to this response file, because only the contents of this response file, which is a virtual file only created for executing this application. So the contents of this file will be returned to the user. So we can say response.body hello world. And if we don't set the content type, it will be automatically set to HTML. Otherwise, you would set the content type on the response file. So this is writing JavaScript. This gets problematic. If you have more content, you will start writing things like var p equals nothing, then p. You're going to append to this variable, for example, b, and then you're going to close it, and then you are going to add maybe the hello world here, like this, and in the end, you're going to write this variable p with all its contents to the response body. So if I open this, you see it again says hello world. So while this works, this might be very complex when you're actually generating HTML code. So let's see the next engine, which is the SGS4, the SGS4E engine. Sorry, this one. No, this one. I'm getting it. Go away. All right, it's not as easy. So let's create SGS4E, put it at the end, set the file type, and this 4E engine is an embedded JavaScript 4 engine, which means by default you're writing HTML, and in this HTML code, similar to PHP, you can embed JavaScript. So if you just write hello world, this will work as before. The trick is that you can embed JavaScript, so you could also say, I don't know, f.path, that will print the path of this file. So f points to this file, and the path will be domain/sgs4e. So let's see it in action. There you go. So you can embed JavaScript into your HTML instead of embedding HTML into JavaScript. Might be much easier if you're writing lots of HTML. I will leave it like that. Next, SGS4ET. Move to the end, set the type. All right, the 4ET engine is like the 4E embedded JavaScript engine, except with Turbo CSS support. So we can use the same code as before, but this time we will get an error first that the base package for Turbo CSS is not installed. So it says, please install this package. How do you do that? You just open it, click on install, and select the website where you want to install it. And it says we're done. Let's refresh this page, and now it says hello world. So again, we get the same output. Now the difference is, and let me actually copy all of this to make sure that you can see you get the same output. But now you can use Turbo CSS to style this. So for example, in the B, or actually let's go here and say plus equals T1. T1 is for starting up the Turbo CSS engine, so to say. So without that, it would not do anything. And maybe you can say BGC gray 100 for a subtle gray background. Add some paddings everywhere, or maybe just 16 at the top and 32 at the sides, and maybe use a larger font size, I don't know, 24. All right, and now it will look different. So instead of writing raw CSS in a separate file and matching the class names, now you can use Turbo CSS and copy Turbo CSS code snippets into your code. So that's another advancement. So we have done these. We have written code directly into a file, and we have visited that file. That's not the only way. Actually, that's a shorthand. So we are going to write applications now. So how to write an application? Let's create a file, app HTML1. Oops. All right. Move it to the end. Okay. And now we are going to set its type to app1, which is a generic type for writing an application. When you create a file with an app1 type, it doesn't implement any of the methods, because under the hood, these applications implement the request method to serve a request. So if we open this file, we are going to get an error that the request method is not defined for this file. So let's come back. And how can we implement it? We go inside this file, like as if this was a directory. And we are going to create a file named request. And now this is the file that is going to be executed, and we can set the HTML1 type here. we can actually come back and use the same code. So go in here, paste it here, and now we are going to open the original file, so the app, and it will return hello world. We can do that with all the other files. So we can create, let's copy all these to the end and rename it to app.sjs4. And this is going to be an application, app1. I think I'm making a mistake because, anyways, so this can be empty. This is an app1 type again, and inside it, we create the .request file, set the body to this, and the file type is sjs4e. If we come back and visit this file, it will say hello world. Second one, we are going to do the same thing with all of them. The reason I do this is that you are going to start to pick up the pattern. So the type is again app1. I'm going to remove the file body, come inside it, create the .request file, set the code, and set the type sjs4e. And now we are again opening the application, not the request file. That would serve the request as well, as we have seen above, but we are going to open the application file. It says hello world. And finally, app sjs4et. Move this, change the file type to app1, go inside it, .request, and sjs4et, open the application. There you go, it works as well. All right. So we have seen all these. Now let's move on to instances. So at first, we have created files that were visited directly and the response generated from their files bodies. Then we have created applications where it's not the file itself, but a request file inside them. Now we are going to create instances of these applications, which means an instance is, well, there can be many instances using the same central application code. And then when you visit the instances, it will be the central application code that will be executed. So you can keep your code in one place, and if you have to modify it, you're not going to need to modify every single instance. You can just modify the central application. So let's do that. How was the name? Instance 1. So let's create instance 1, move it to the end. It doesn't really matter which file type we are going to use, so I think I wanted to use, yes, the sjs4et. So we are going to reference this application in the file type sjs4et with a slash. So we are going to use a path relative to the root of the website. You can't include the domain name here. And then we are going to visit that, and there you go. We get the same output. Notice that it will say instance 1, and we are visiting that file. So indeed, the file f points to the file being visited. So this is great. For your interest, if we come here and change this request file, maybe we could add a couple more variables. So maybe we can add that there's a file f, which we print by f.path. And there's a file called source, which is another one. And the distinction is that source file will be where this source code is. So it will be this request file, and the f file will be the instance. So let's come back here and visit it. And as you can see, this is the file this is the instance. So f points to the instance, source points to the request file. This will be useful because sometimes you will need to reference other files either relative to the source file or relative to the instance. And now you have access to both. And also to show you that you can create multiple instances, we are going to create instance 2, move it to the end, and set its type to app SJS4ET. Now, previously we have used a reference, a relative path starting with the slash, so a path relative to the website root. You can also use a document relative path. So in this case, we are going to use // app-sjs4et. The reason why we need this dot is and not, so we can't say app SJS4et, let me show. It will say this file has broken the type chain, which means it can't follow the type chain. So we need this dot, and now it will work. And the f variable will again point to instance 2, so the correct file. So the reason is that in Boomla, when a file is executed, the context is the file itself, not its parent, like on traditional operating systems. And that's crucial because otherwise you lose context, because in Boomla it does make sense to go into the file because you can store files there. On traditional operating systems like Windows and Linux, you can't store files in other files, so it's okay to lose that context, but not in Boomla. So what we have seen now is that you can create multiple instances that use the same application code, and that you can reference that application in multiple ways. And then we are going to see a chain. Let's see, chain, move it to the end, and reference instance 1. Open it, and it works as well. Now, the reason is why this works, because when a request hits the server, Boomla will find the file, in this case chain, and then it will start following its type chain. So it looks at the instance 1 file, which is this, and then it looks at the type of that file, which is this. So that's called the type chain, the chain of files one after the other. And then it will call the request method on the start of that chain, so in this case the chain file. And because there is no request file in here, it will follow the chain and go to instance 1. There is no request file in here either, so it will follow that chain and go to app SJS4ET, which is this one. It has a type app1, it goes inside it. It does have a request file, so it will execute that file. Sometimes if the type chain ends in a built-in type, for example, in the case of these top files, you would not need to have a request file because the request method is built into the platform. The type knows how to serve requests. So you can create really long type chains, and generally you won't need to. And then the last one, which is packages. So you could use these applications inside another website. So we are going to turn this website into a package. So first off, we are going to commit our changes, implement apps, and because you can't install the website on itself as a package because that would be redundant, we are going to clone this first. So go to the control panel root, create a new project, clone by domain, this one, and give it a domain, maybe 13 ways of hello world package. And we can open it. The root file doesn't have a type set, we didn't, that's fine. And we can open any of these and it will work as expected. And now we can install this. So the way to install this, I'm going to use a simple hack now. Go to boomla.com, store, and start installing the UI kit. Just change the domain here. That's the fastest hack to get it done. And then I want to install the package onto the original we worked on. It's installed. And now let's close the package and go back here. And now if you go to sys packages, you will see that here is the package we have installed. If we go inside it, there are our applications. We can open any of those and they will work as expected. But we can now also use those as applications for our own files. So let's go maybe inside this and copy. We can either copy the entire path relative to the root file. So installed app. Oops, I forgot that I'm still inside the installed package. So you have to go higher and create the file here. So installed app, because you can't write the installed package. Move it to the end and set the type to sys packages domain / our file. Save it, open, and it will work as well. You don't need the sys packages prefix because that's the default. So if I remove it and just use the domain / the application's path and save it, that will work as well. So when you install a package and you have an application inside it that you're going to use, what is happening under the hood is you're creating a file that is pointing to an application inside the package by its path. So that was it. 13 ways of returning hello world in Boomla.